Ever had this experience? You go to check your email and there's a message from one of your investors, say, and just seeing their name, you haven't even opened the email yet, your stomach drops because your last conversation didn't go so well and you're already dreading what it says. This is what I call a stealth trigger. It's a minor stressor that sets off an emotional reaction. Same thing when one of your VPs rolls their eyes while you're explaining why you made a decision, or you walk into a team meeting and everybody stops talking. None of these are life-threatening, but they still put your nervous system on high alert. I'm Renita, an executive coach, and I've worked with over 1,000 founders, and every single one deals with these stealth triggers. But hardly anyone is talking about how much of a toll they take on your energy. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my FASTT model, based in neuroscience, which maps the 5 stealth triggers most likely to hijack your brain as a founder, and how to neutralize them. Every founder I work with who internalizes this model tells me the same thing. They feel more in control, make better decisions under pressure, and they stop taking other people's behaviors so personally. By the end of the video, you'll have a system for identifying what's triggering you in real time. Also, stay till the very end because I'll be sharing the tip that I give Navy SEAL candidates to calm down your nervous system when you're having a fight or flight reaction. So a quick recap. The amygdala is like the fire alarm of the brain. It detects threats to your survival. And when it goes off, it overrides your prefrontal cortex, the part that's responsible for rational, strategic thinking. These days, there aren't many threats to our physical survival. We have plenty to eat and nothing's trying to eat us. So the brain reacts to threats in our social environment. And the reason I call them stealth triggers is because they're subtle. What's really stressing you out isn't fundraising. It's the investor who seemed genuinely interested but hasn't responded to your last 2 emails. It's not hiring, it's finding out that that talented engineer just signed with your competitor. And it's not board meetings, it's the board member who rolls their eyes when you're talking about strategy. And you experience hundreds, maybe thousands of these stressors every day. And every time one fires, your body is pumping out stress hormones, putting you in survival mode, eating up mental energy, affecting the quality of your decisions. And it's not just you, it's happening to everyone around you. We're all going through our day bombarded by these stealth triggers, which explains why people often behave so irrationally. So FAST stands for Future, Autonomy, Status, Tribe, and Time. And I'm going to go through each one and give you examples. Personally, I think of it like a game. As soon as I notice I'm triggered, I try to figure out which one of the 5 it is. So let's dive in. The first trigger, future. When it comes to survival, your brain is always asking one question. Can I predict what's going to happen? Because the brain does not like uncertainty. It wants to rely on autopilot and pattern recognition. And when it can't predict and control what's going to happen, it takes more resources to process experience. And the brain sees that as a threat. I worked with one CEO who was so uncomfortable with uncertainty that he had this strong pull to make decisions, even bad ones, just so he could know what the outcome was. The uncertainty itself was more threatening than a wrong decision. That's how powerful this trigger is. So there's the macro level, a geopolitical conflict which disrupts your supply chain, the fundraising environment shifts overnight, you realize the latest version of generative AI makes half of your product features irrelevant. And then there's the micro level. You're supposed to have a client meeting at 2 o'clock and it's 2:05. Are they going to show up? Did I get the time wrong? How long should I wait? Should I send them an email? See what I mean? You could have 100 future stealth triggers before lunch alone. So how do you neutralize it? Well, you create your own certainty. There are a few ways to do this. Make lists. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know. Here's what I need to find out. You'd be surprised how much that alone, just getting it out of your head and onto paper, reduces the threat. You've created certainty around what you don't know. If-then plans are also great for creating certainty. If we don't hear back from the supplier or the client by Tuesday, we do Y. Now, what about your team? Too often, I see founders assuming people know what they're thinking, and they don't. One of my clients, a managing director law firm, had told the team she was going to hire a new associate. And then she just decided to hire 2 people instead of 1. But she didn't tell the team, and it created this panic because they were convinced that one of them was about to be fired. So make the implicit explicit. Share your thought process, not just your conclusions. Say out loud what you know, even if it's not much. Years ago, I worked in business development at a chaotic startup where the company's strategy changed every week. And my manager would come in during periods of this constant change and say, I know there's lots of uncertainty right now. Here's what I can tell you. I'll know more on Thursday, and I'll tell you more then. That's it. He hadn't solved anything, but it calmed down that anxiety around what was happening next. The next trigger is autonomy. Do I have control over what I do? Think about it. When do you experience more stress? When you decide to pivot or when your board tells you you have to pivot? Same decision, completely different experience. So when something takes away your sense of control, the amygdala fires as if it's a physical threat. And for founders, this shows up in a myriad of ways, especially as you're scaling. Investor pressure to provide updates, make business decisions you don't agree with, having to put processes and bureaucracy in place. Then there are the micro threats. You check your calendar and someone's added a last-minute meeting. Somebody's blasting the air conditioner and it's freezing inside. So to neutralize the autonomy threat for yourself, ask, what's one tiny action I can take right now to feel in control? Not control of the whole situation, just one thing. And that question alone shifts your brain out of threat mode back into agency. And again, keep in mind your team is dealing with autonomy threats too, having to use a different software, being micromanaged, changing deadlines. So a powerful tactic is to simply acknowledge when you're taking away someone's autonomy. You can say, I know it's frustrating when we keep changing the deadline, or I get it, some of you really don't like this CRM software. You'd be surprised. Saying out loud what they're already thinking removes a lot of that resistance. Also, give options where you can. You need them coming on the weekend? Give them a choice. Which day is better for you, Saturday or Sunday? S is for status. What's my standing in comparison to others? We don't walk around consciously measuring our status, but our brain is tracking it constantly because think about it. When we were cavemen, our status or perceived importance in the tribe was directly tied to who would attract the best mate or the best cut of meat, basically our survival. So whenever we meet someone, we're instantly gauging our relative standing depending on what we care about. So with another entrepreneur, for example, you're probably thinking about how much funding they've raised, their valuation, how impressive their clients are. Status threats are subtle and they're everywhere. One of the most common ones is being wrong or making a mistake because the brain will do anything to avoid being wrong. That's why you feel defensive when an investor asks, why hasn't this gotten more traction? Or your sales VP says, are you sure that's the right strategy? Even something as innocuous as unsolicited advice. Your brain translates that as, oh, this person thinks they know better than me. And don't assume it's necessarily about formal status. One of my clients in the military special forces was a captain in the Green Berets. And noticed that when he met with the generals in Washington, they experienced a kind of status threat. They saw him as out in the field doing brave, dangerous work. I see the same phenomenon with investors who are intimidated by brilliant founders who are actually in the trenches doing the hard work of building something new and innovative. So much of our conversations is about protecting status than the actual content being discussed. So to neutralize the status triggers, remember the 3 A's: acknowledge, agree, and appreciate. Acknowledgement. There's always some aspect of a situation to acknowledge. I acknowledge this wasn't the decision you were expecting. Acknowledging doesn't equal admitting fault or agreement, but it's always good if you can find something to agree with. Remember how I said the brain doesn't like to be wrong? Even if you disagree with someone on certain things, you can always find something genuine to agree with before you disagree. So, for example, I agree this conflict has been going on for a long time. Or you're right, we need to change our approach. And the third A is appreciation. I worked with a founder who was dealing with an unsupportive board, and he kept making his case, trying more logic, more persuasion, but the resistance kept growing. And once he understood the status dynamics at play, he changed his approach. He started off the board meeting by expressing his appreciation for their support and how they'd contributed to the growth and the financial rigor of the company. And he saw an immediate shift in their attitude and was able to get their support in $2 million in bridge financing. So as CEO, your status is by definition higher than anyone else in the organization. So a simple way to raise someone's status is to ask permission first. Simple ways. Would you like to hear my thought process? Can I share what was going through my mind? Would you like to hear how I handle? T is for tribe. Years ago, I had joined an organization and had been there for just 3 weeks when I went with my new team on a business trip. And at the airport, I got stopped at customs because my ID had expired. So I kind of waved to the team to go ahead to the gate and I'd catch up. But one of my colleagues said, "No man left behind," just like they do in the special forces. And that created more trust than a year of team building exercises. So tribe is about asking the question, am I part of the group? Can I trust them? Am I being treated fairly? Research with MRI shows that the same part of the brain lights up when we experience social threats, so feeling excluded, misunderstood, or treated unfairly, as when we feel physical threats to our survival. For founders, this trigger is particularly insidious because it's often a result of success itself. One founder whose company was growing so fast they had to expand their office space 3 times in 2 years told me how he felt like he'd become the man. In the early days of his startup, he and his team, they all worked in the same room. He knew how they liked their coffee, their dogs' names. And now he said he doesn't know everyone's name anymore, much less their dogs. He hates when he walks in the room and everyone stops talking. So that loss of belonging, of being part of the group rather than outside of it, was more of a trigger than he realized. Turning it into a reward can be simple. One CEO client told me he remembered how much it meant when a CEO would stop by his table when he worked at a company. And once he became CEO himself, he realized he had the same power and was barely using it. So I told him a thumbs up across the room could be huge. Stopping by during the workday just to ask how someone's doing, staying late with the marketing team during a product launch, not to work, just to be present and supportive. He told me, "The team is always proud when I'm proud, and I can easily make people feel seen. I just have to use that." So those small moments of connection didn't just help his team feel included, they helped him feel less isolated too. And the final T is time. Will I have enough? As a founder, you're keenly, maybe even obsessively aware of time, often thinking this is taking too long, we're running out of time. For sure, it's hard not to come from a place of scarcity around time when the success of your company seems to revolve around it. So here's what you need to understand. Like with the other fast triggers, our brain perceives lack of time as an actual survival threat, which means every time you imagine an unwanted consequence related to time, you're triggering a fight or flight response. So you think, are we going to fix the bug in time for the client presentation tomorrow morning? Your brain registers, death is imminent. You think, we don't have enough cash to make payroll next month. Your brain registers, death is imminent. So now think about the 100 ways you can be triggered by time scarcity just during a typical workday. You need that deal to come through to generate revenues, to hire that rock star engineer before your competitor does, to get to a meeting in time, to finish a meeting in time, to get home in time, to see your kids before they go to bed. And this time scarcity mindset comes with a bandwidth tax. According to the authors of the book Scarcity, this perception of being overwhelmed or feeling behind induces a kind of short-sightedness that affects our decision making, making us less insightful, less forward-thinking, less controlled. Not exactly the recipe for high performance. So how do you neutralize the time threat? First thing to do is simple. Just recognize the false alarms. Notice when your fight or flight triggers are related to time. Do you feel a pit in your stomach when you realize you're behind schedule? Panic a little when you hear what another founder accomplished recently? Or if you're like me, you find that you just always have this sense of rushing through your day just to get to the next thing and the next thing. So what I do is I pause and check whether my survival is literally, actually in danger. I ask myself, am I being chased by a saber-toothed tiger? Is my hair on fire? If not, I can tell myself, false alarm, my life is not in danger, I'm safe. Another powerful technique is to use time as a tool, not a threat. That's the difference between being in survival mode and working well under pressure. So when you're going in circles, thinking about something, give yourself a time limit, not to solve the problem, just to interrupt the loop. So I'm going to think about this for 15 minutes and then I'll move on. Or I'm not going to think about this now, I'll decide this on Tuesday. So one of my clients had 60 days of runway left, but he was also on the verge of signing a large investment deal with a strategic partner, which would totally fix the runway problem. But negotiations were dragging, and I could see he was burning a lot of mental energy worrying about when or whether to tell the team. So I said, you can't decide that today, so stop going in circles about it. Tell yourself you'll see where things are on Tuesday. So time as a threat keeps you stuck and in scarcity. Time as a tool keeps you focused and moving. And one more thing about why your relationship with time matters more than you think. Your relationship to time is contagious. You want to create a sense of urgency, yes. But if you're rushing, scattered, transmitting scarcity, your team feels it, and it just amplifies the impact of scarcity. And as promised, here's my favorite tip for interrupting the fight or flight reaction. This is the one I share with Navy SEAL candidates when they're preparing for Hell Week. And here it is. It's to wiggle your toes. It sounds silly, but here's why it works. At no point in human history did our survival depend on wiggling our toes. So when you do it, your brain gets a signal. Wait, maybe I'm not actually in danger. And that's enough to interrupt the cycle. So that's the FASTT model. 5 kinds of threats, 5 questions your amygdala is constantly asking without you realizing. What's going to happen next? Am I in control? How do I compare to others? Am I part of the group? Will I run out of time? And they're perpetually running in the background. If you want a cheat sheet for these, I'll put a link to the FASTT map in the description that you can download for easy reference. And remember, the stealth triggers will keep coming. The investor's name will still land in your inbox. The board member will still roll their eyes. The team will still go quiet sometimes. Don't underestimate their impact, but at least now you'll know why it's happening and you'll have some ideas of how to neutralize it. And that alone will give you a huge sense of control. So comment below which one or 5 of these triggers showed up for you today. I'm rooting for you.